Welcome to the Heartpicker Podcast. My name is Lara Blacklock, and this is episode 14. Yo, what's up, everybody? How's it going? Today we'll be talking to a metaphysical healer by the name of Garry Fung. He has his own methodology for healing, all on a metaphysical level. He has practiced Reiki and completed courses in Reiki. He's a follower and believer of the law of one. And these are all practices that have influenced him in his own methodology for healing. Garry Fung lives in Australia and was born in Australia, but comes from a Chinese background. And he stumbled upon this by just really accidentally practicing his healing abilities on people and noticing that for him, metaphysical healing is correcting disbalances that we have in our bodies due to emotional issues, mental issues, psychological issues, etc. And when he saw that his work was working and was being successful among his friends, he decided to put up a website and offer it to the world. So the reason I decided that I really wanted to have Garry on this podcast was because, I naturally believe a little more in people who don't charge huge amounts. There's so many different healers, and a lot of them will charge you a lot of money or a small amount of money, but they'll charge. And the fact that Garry has a different job sustaining him, but still, the fact that he decided to put up a website and offer his services, but by donation, it really helped me to believe more. I've always found it very uncomfortable for people to charge a good amount of money for spiritual practices. And I understand that people who have a gift and who are passionate by spirituality and have talents and have certain gifts and who want to make a living from that because it is their passion, I understand that part because I am one of those myself. But at the same time, there's a problem with the people who really need it the most. If you're trying to do good to the world and people really need healing or spiritual guidance, then denying it to someone because they can't afford it feels a little off to me. Of course, there's so many issues and factors that play into this, but it is something that made me really want to talk to Garry versus perhaps a healer who's famous and popular. I was very curious about a healer like Garry and finding out how he got into this and what he believes in it, and knowing very little about metaphysical healing and very little about Law of One. I found it pretty interesting to hear his side and how he got into this and his way of thinking about things. So I will leave the link to his website down below, because if you like the sound of him and you like what he has to say, maybe if there's something you want to heal, like any kind of physical issue. For example, my issue has always been digestion, headaches, stress levels. You can just explain and describe your problem on his website, and he will plan a working session, and you do not even have to do anything during that working session. Nothing is required of you. He will basically just send you a summary of what he found in the healing session, what he saw. And again, this isn't like an ad. He's not living off of this. It's not an expensive thing. You, again, donate whatever you want, only if the healing works. I've seen his testimonies, and it seems like he has a very high success rate, but you're going to have to find out for yourself if you're curious or interested in this sort of area. So I hope you will enjoy this, and I will leave you to it.
I was born in Australia, but my parents are from Hong Kong and China. So they moved here in the middle, the 1970s, to start a new life. And I was fortunate enough to be born in Australia, and I've lived here all my life. I consider myself an Australian, even though externally, I look pretty Asian. I was a pretty normal kid growing up. even though on some level I felt a little bit different. But I didn't really sort of have a breakthrough or a deep change until I left high school. That happened through a trip to Malaysia, and I got to see, I guess, some real poverty firsthand. So that was a real shock to me growing up in Australia. And so that sort of contrast really sort of, it just made me ask a lot of questions. And so that really began the process of seeking for me. And, that sort of unfolded over the next 10 or 12 years. And I didn't really find the answers I was looking for until I came across a body of material that's called the Ra material. It's also called the Law of One. So it's just, I would describe it as spiritual philosophy. It's not really a religion or it's not something you follow. I guess it's something you kind of like understand and apply to your own life. And so that was really the key to, to the next, I guess, chapter in my life, which was first self-healing, which took quite a few years. And then after I guess I'd fixed myself up, and then I felt sort of called to offer this, I guess, experience or process to other people. And so that's the kind of work that I do as a service online. So yeah, so that's it in a nutshell. And I've been doing, I guess, that healing work for other people for about, I think 5 years now. Yeah, it's been amazing. Like it's enabled me to connect to all sorts of different people across the world and just interface with different experiences and people just all stages of their life, from, I guess, younger people, trying to work things out, when, I guess, in their early 20s and even late teenage years, and all the way up to people at the other end of their lives, people, I guess, in their 70s and 80s, I guess, struggling with some health issues there as well.
So when you said you were, I'm just going to do a list of questions here. When you said you were looking for answers, how did you start looking for these answers? And what answers were you looking for?
Yeah, I guess when this process really began, it was in, I think it would have been 1996. So just at the start of the internet, when they were kind of like when you had to dial in on a phone. The very early days. So obviously there wasn't much available then. So it was basically through the more conventional means, going to, I guess, bookstores and just reading a lot of material. But I had quite an interest in, I guess, some of the more esoteric stuff, religion and spirituality. So, and I guess the questions that were sort of driving that, that was sort of really eating away at me were just questions about existence and purpose. I guess just trying to understand, why are we here? So I guess just a bigger context of what it means to be human and, to be on this particular journey. And as I said, I read quite a lot of things. I first tried to find, I guess, answers in, I guess, the more traditional modes, I guess, like the mainstream type religions, just seeing if they had anything to offer. And the answers weren't particularly deep. So, and the thing that did kind of appeal to me was Buddhism. There were some concepts in there that kind of made sense to me. Things like reincarnation, karma, the Dharma. Living one's life by, I guess, some sort of discipline. So that's what I was looking for. Just I guess deeper answers. I think they were just mainly around just the nature of purpose and existence and just what I was doing here, basically. And as I said, I didn't really find anything that really satisfied me until probably 12 years later when I found the Ra material, and that sort of gave me a sort of a big picture overview of cosmology and just I guess the system of existence, the whole process of evolution, not just the human phase, but just the steps beforehand and the steps after one is, has the experience of being a human. So a much bigger overview, I guess. And how I came across it was through there's a spiritual teacher by the name of David Wilcock. He's quite well known in, I guess, metaphysical circles. He's able to articulate those really quite well, and so people sort of regard him as a kind of a teacher, or just someone who can, just point a different way forward. And so, I was quite interested in what he had to say for a few years, and but he would quite often mention something called the law of one that had influenced him deeply. And so I eventually looked that up online. Yeah, it's available free of charge. It's also available in book form if you can sort of pay for those. But otherwise, all the material is available on a website for free. Basically, what it is, it was a set of dialogues that was conducted in the early 1980s, I think from 1981 to 1984, and it's channeled material. Channeled material is basically information that's coming from a source that's not human. So you can say, it's coming from the spirit world, or it's coming from an ET source, extraterrestrial source, aliens, if you want to use that term. But it's not the source of the information is not human, and so that can be a bit off-putting for a lot of people. But I tend to have the view that it's not really okay. You can sort of make claims about what the source is, but ultimately you sort of judge, the material on its own. Like, is this actually sharing new concepts and insights, and how relevant are they to you personally? And so you can sort of skip the question of, where it comes from, but ultimately, channeled material is it claims to be from, a non-human source, whether that's the spirit world or somewhere else. So like I said, I don't put a lot of emphasis on, where it comes from, and just sort of these channeled texts on how much value they offer you personally. It's just like, how interesting are they, or how many new ideas do they offer? And so that's, I guess, the kind of approach I tend to take. And so the law of one is to kind of a dialogue between Don Elkins, who was the questioner, and this other group that's non-human. It took place in Kentucky, in the USA, as I said, in the early 80s. And the material was recorded on audio tape, and then they transcribed it, and then they published it in originally in, I guess, book format, and then it's available online these days.
And how did it go with your parents and your family side in all of the search of yours, and what you found,
Mm-hmm.
and when you discovered the law of one, and connected with that? Did you have any challenges or struggles with your family and your friends, or was it pretty smooth?
No, it was quite a rift. As I said, I come from a family that is Asian, and they're very conventional in terms of their mindset and their expectations. So just stick to the the normal things, live a normal life, have a family, and just be comfortable. Don't rock the boat, kind of thing. And so when I had my, I guess, first awakening after high school when I was 18, and I guess I kind of mixed up my lifestyle. Sort of, I went vegetarian. I kind of cut my own hair. Just started doing more strange things. They couldn't really understand what I was doing. Like, it didn't make sense to them. And so, they really struggled with my life choices, I guess. Even though I did attend university, and I wasn't totally dropping out of the normal life. Basically, after that point, they didn't really fully understand what was motivating, what I was doing. And so, in the last few years, there's definitely been more acceptance from them, and also my acceptance of where they're coming from. And so, the relationship's pretty good these days. But probably still to this day, they probably don't quite get me and what I'm interested in and what I'm doing. So, which is common for spiritual seekers. We really have to step outside of society to, I guess, do what we do, and try to find what we're looking for.
When you found the law of one, was it like an intuitive feeling that made you think, okay, this is it. This is what I believe in. This is my truth. Like, how was that experience for you? Did you just know right away, or was it after learning more about it, or it was just you were attracted to it and you just knew? Like, how was that
Yeah,
experience for
yeah, for
you?
me, it was pretty instantaneous. Yeah, it just clicked. I guess if I had to describe it, it was like almost like this long quest I'd been on for 10 or 12 years, just looking everywhere to find answers that satisfied me. It kind of reached that single point, when I found this material. And it was basically, even though I didn't know it, it was the thing that I'd been looking for. Like even I'd been looking in all these other places for these answers or these understandings, and then when I found the raw material, it was basically this is this is it. It makes sense. Like this was the key. This was the thing. You don't obviously read this material in one day. It comes in 106 sessions. It's usually it can be published in 4 smaller books, or the current version is in 2 thicker books. So there's a lot to get through. But yeah, once I'd found it, I just couldn't stop reading it, and it explained everything that all the, I guess, the vague and even refined questions that had been in the back of my mind.
Yeah, it's when you find something that you connect with spiritually, it becomes fascinating. You just want to read all about it, and you're instantly wanting to learn more and more. That's when you know you've found kind of your place or your belief system or whatever you want to call it. Some people get excited and want to share it with their friends and their family members, or they just want to share that. And other people are more, I guess, introverted and don't have that need to share it and to have people see it as well. How was that experience for you? I guess what I want to get to is that some people will feel will have a hard time, like, socially, in a way, when they found something that's different to the rest of their social circle. Sometimes there's some shame with people who are more spiritually inclined and into esoteric things. So I guess what I'm trying to get to, and I'm wondering, is if you went through that, or yeah, how was that for you when you finally found something that, yeah, not a lot of people, I think, know about.
Yeah, no, I pretty much kept it to myself. I sort of recognized that it was such a niche thing that it would turn most people off. Like just I guess, just the nature of the concepts and the language involved, and plus the fact that it does come from a so-called channeled source. It's just pretty weird, right? And so I guess I knew better than to share it with. For me, it was more just like I found something that really, I guess, clicked with me, and then that wasn't like the end of it. I mean, there was a process of quite a few years of actually digesting it and actually, I guess, making sense of it. Even though a lot of the answers click straight away, it's still quite profound text, and so it's not immediately obvious what some of the understandings are, and so it does take some work. Basically, I just got started on that process, which was basically to, I guess, digest what was being offered and, I guess, try to make sense of it in my own framework. Yeah, I wasn't, sort of buying copies of the books and handing them out on the street corner, to to strangers. Yeah, I didn't sort of go that route, but I definitely know, yeah, that people definitely, I guess, when they find something that works for them, they feel like just shouting it out and saying, "This is it, this is it." But yeah, I guess I knew better. Like I said, this is very strange and esoteric stuff, and for most people, you're not going to be able to convince them. It's just going to put them off if you try to, talk about these kind of things. So, yeah, I pretty much kept it to myself. I guess this will tie into the next stage of my journey, which was, how I ended up becoming a healer. So yes, at that particular point in my life, very late 20s, early 30s. So I can't remember how old I was exactly, but around that, yeah, 29, 30 period. Yeah, I'd become very introverted and isolated at that point. It was due to a number of factors. I just felt like I didn't fit in at all. That I'd been on this long quest for answers, and I still hadn't found anything until of course I found the Law of One. Yeah, I really felt quite lost at that period of my life. And then I guess after finding the Law of One, I knew things had to change. Once you find your true you, then then it's incumbent on you to start living it. Yeah, so I started working on myself. My main issues were in the solar plexus. I'm not sure if you know about the chakras and the energy centers. Yeah, the solar plexus is basically the social ray. It's how well you fit in with others. It's about knowing your place. It's about, I guess, valuing your contributions to this planet and our society. And so all those things had become really clogged up in my consciousness. And so that was what I had to work on in the next few years, which was just addressing certain patterns in myself, like understanding, how I'd gotten into that situation where I'd become so isolated. And so, yeah, that was intense inner work, psychological work. And the Ra material, also offers, I guess, a framework for self-healing. It was actually, it helped me understand the chakras. Actually, like it was one of their explanations of it made sense of the chakras, even though I'd read lots of different accounts of what the chakras were. None of them really clicked. So there was about a 5-year period after I found the Ra material, from ages 30 to 35, where I guess I was going through that process of inner change and reconfiguration. That was the inner healing stage.
So by healing yourself, in terms of
Yes.
why you became isolated, that's when you realized. Is that when you realized I can help other people, or I want to help other people?
It wasn't planned. Ra describes healing in many different ways, but one of the ways they describe it is in terms of balancing. So when you've become out of balance in a certain area in your life or your consciousness, then you're going to experience the effects or the consequences. And so part of self-healing involves balancing, whatever that vague term means, but they sort of go hand in hand. So once I'd balance myself in the solar plexus to a reasonable level, yeah, it was quite a surprise to me, actually, that there was a kind of a switch to offer this to others. It wasn't what I was planning, and it wasn't what I was expecting, but it was almost like a calling, like, okay, now I guess now you're ready. Now you've sort of fixed yourself up. Now you can begin the next chapter. It was very much like a calling. That this practice that I sort of learned and then applied to myself was then relevant, and it could be applied to other people as well. Given their sort of issues and patterns. Yeah, as I said, it wasn't like something I decided that I wanted to do that. It was just like well, this is your calling. This is actually the next step.
And so this practice that you did to finally reach that balance within yourself and to heal that within yourself, how did you do that?
Yeah.
How did you go about it?
Yeah. I mean, there's many different strands to that. One of the things I utilized just in terms of my self-development was just making better use of my dream life. I don't write them down, but I sort of, when I do wake up from a dream, I sort of go through all the main details. I just sort of like make a checklist of, oh, that was important, that was important, that was important. So some people like to write it down, all the details, but I just do it mentally. I just to run through the main points. I try to figure out, what's going on with this dream. And I guess if I had to offer any sort of insight for other people, I would say that dreams are, even though they're super weird, they're very relevant to what you've been going through recently, whether it's the previous day or the previous week or just whatever phase of life that you're experiencing. And so if you approach dreams with the attitude that, well, this is somehow relevant, I don't know how it's relevant, I don't know like what it's trying to say, but if you just start off with that attitude, then that can sort of offer the way into whatever you're trying to work out with the dream. It's almost like reverse engineering the dream. Like if you think it's relevant, then you kind of have to, then you sort of match that up with, like I said, some, whatever issue or experience that you're going through in your current life. And then you kind of try to see how it applies. And if you try that, usually you find some sort of resonance or some sort of commonality in the dream to what you're going through. And then, as you sort of dig deeper into it, I'm not saying it's always the case, but quite often you'll find some sort of insight that'll help you see things from a different angle. And that's enough to change the entire situation if you can do that. So for me, in terms of self-development, I really started using my dreams a lot. I also started doing what's called shadow work. That was from Carl Jung. He sort of introduced that aspect into the Western world. But shadow work is basically just revealing aspects of yourself that like you've kind of denied in yourself. So I guess when you have, I guess, an emotional response to someone else or a situation, then there's actually something behind that. It's not just like the emotion just doesn't come out of nowhere. It comes out of something more deeply rooted. And so shadow work is basically about finding those connections and finding how it's relevant to you. So much like with the dream work, making sense of your dreams, shadow work is also about finding how and why this is actually relevant to you. I guess the inputs from your sleeping mind, your unconscious mind, when that stuff comes up in your dreams, and then using shadow work, which I guess deals more with that triggered in your day-to-day life, your emotions and things like regret, anger, dissatisfaction, things like that. It's just finding the deeper roots of that. I guess reconnecting with yourself on a deeper level.
Did you did you do all this by yourself, or did you at some point talk to someone about it? Like, for example, dreams. Sometimes when you look at them, they're not so easy to figure out, or they take some time.
Yeah.
This was like instant for you, like it came naturally to you to understand, to yeah, like did you ever get confused at some point and need to talk to someone about some things?
No. Yeah, this was very much pretty much a solo journey in terms of just working things out by myself. And yes, yeah, you definitely get stuck. I mean, you get stuck all the time, almost every day. But yeah, I was just really committed and like dedicated to figuring it out. Once the law of one had, I guess, given me, I guess, a structure that made sense to me. Like I was just so keen, and I just had this. Like I just knew that I would figure it out. Like I just had to keep applying myself, and so I'm not sure where that sense of certainty came from, but it was just rock solid. Like I never doubted that I would figure it out. Yeah, I didn't seek the help of others in that process. Like I of course I read things online and I looked up, people that had done this themselves, but I didn't engage with anyone in person or, seek them out.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing, and it's certainly a talent, because not a lot of people have the will to look at themselves in depth, or the ability to understand, what's going on, and like where to even start with shadow work, and how to approach that. And you say that you get stuck a lot, almost every day. What do you do in those moments when you feel stuck?
Um, yeah, for me, I mean, meditation is quite a helpful tool. I know that's recommended by almost everyone. It's kind of become a meaningless to say, like just meditate on it and things like that. But um, I think I think it does work. Of course, there's different ways of meditating. I would just say, don't make it too complicated, and also don't force yourself to meditate if you don't really feel like it. I mean, it's like all these things. It's best treated with respect, and so there's no need to force it. So if you treat it with respect and you think it's the right time, and you just basically sit down, close your eyes, just be more quiet, and sometimes things will start to make more sense. And so I think meditation helps in terms of like when you get stuck. Another go-to is I know it's so cliched and common, but if you're able to go experience some nature, whether it's for me, I don't have access to the beach or the ocean close by, but I do have some forests that I can go to. And if you can spend some time in nature, just walking, or if you live closer by to, I guess, the ocean, then you can just sit by there. Quite often, the I guess the rhythms of nature can help reconnect you, so things again make more sense, or that you can see the connections to things. And aside from that, yeah, I mean, there's no real deep advice. I mean, yeah, you can read spiritual material to get some further insights. I mean, yeah, getting stuck is definitely part of the journey, and I guess as you become more experienced, you sort of learn to find tools that work for you. But it is part of the process. Getting stuck is basically what Ra describes as the Ra from the Ra material. They describe it as a catalyst. So it's basically like a trigger or an opportunity to keep seeking and keep finding something about yourself.
Right. And how long did it take you to heal yourself? Or is it a constant process and you're doing that every
Oh yeah,
day
yeah.
still?
It's still ongoing. Not, I guess, not, not in terms of the real big things, but in terms of in terms of the self healing, I'd say that that took about 5 years, and I got to the point where I understood it well enough, and I'd become balanced enough where I could become this I guess this facilitator for other people, And yes, since then, in the last 5 years, yeah, it's a process of refinement and going deeper. So it's by no means complete. Still healing and still balancing.
Are we ever truly healed? Like completely healed? Does a human ever reach that point?
I think if you did, then there'd be nothing left for you to learn. Life is still a struggle. It just depends how much of a struggle it is. I mean, yes, when things get too much, usually it'll show up quite obviously. Whether it's like some sort of physical condition, like a very sore knee. It may be in extreme cases, get some sort of cancer. But even leading up to those experiences, you'll usually mentally and emotionally, you'll feel like you'll be struggling, like things don't make sense, or you won't be happy at all. There's always indicators that sort of tell us that we're not 100% in the flow and connecting with our life. There's always something to learn, always something to experience, and it's just how well we handle those new challenges. Life can be a real struggle, and so for most people, they have challenges that come into their life, and they don't know how to handle them, whether it's say a relationship issue, or say a career issue. If you're doing work that you don't really like, but you have to do it for an income, and that will sort of build up as like a kind of a frustration, or just something in your consciousness that you're not happy about. And we can either face up to it and like just acknowledge it and accept it, and then try to figure it out, or for a lot of people, they don't know how to handle it, and so they try to ignore it, or they use alcohol, or so they find ways of getting away from it, and then it just keeps building up, over months and years. And then if it's still not dealt with, then that pressure will sort of push through into the physical space. And like I said, you'll end up with some sort of symptoms, whether it's maybe some sort of back pain, or something happens to your teeth, or whatever. It'll express itself in usually some kind of poetic way. And so yeah, I think basically life is like a constant challenge or a question, and you can sort of deal with it, right now, or you can sort of put it off, and then it gets to the point where, as I said, it becomes some sort of physical symptom, and then you can continue putting it off, or you sort of have to face it in some way. If you sort of face up to it, then you can sort of just rebalance yourself and continue learning and continue progressing. But the question of, is anyone ever fully healed? No, I don't think so. There's definitely places. There's a point you can reach where you're definitely very comfortable in your body, very comfortable in your consciousness, like just in terms of just a sense of security, a sense of hopefulness, and just a sense of like you just know what you're doing. But no, life is basically full of uncertainties, and so you always have to deal with things that come up, and it puts you off balance. And then it's a matter of coming back into balance day after day, or time after time. And that might sound like very grim, like you can't just get it done, and then like I don't have to think about it anymore. But I mean, that's not why we're here. I mean, we're here to constantly meet new challenges, and constantly grow and connect with new people, and just expand our vision of what's possible. Healing goes hand in hand with growth, I think. Like, I think the two are quite synonymous. And when people aren't healed and they're really stuck with something, then they're not growing, like they're not meeting life's challenges. So I know that's a different way of using the term healing, but like I said, Ra also describes it as rebalancing. So yeah, I guess it's just a different view on
Mm-hmm.
that process.
Yeah. And I've always wondered, maybe you could answer this for me. Are there ever, like, in terms of physical
Yes.
symptoms, are there physical symptoms that are just physical symptoms, like without any emotional or spiritual explanation behind them, or any problem behind them? Like, is that like if I have a stomach ache or a headache or even, yeah, cancer, it is there a possibility where these physical symptoms show up for just for the sake of it, or is it always because of an internal issue? I hope I framed that
Yeah, no, no,
question
no.
right.
Yeah, you've said it beautifully. Actually, I guess there's two main ways I would answer that. I think there's in terms of internally motivated symptoms. Say for a headache, there's many reasons why you get a headache, but there are also reasons where there doesn't seem to be external factors. Like for example, like you can get a headache say through dehydration. All right, and so I mean you could point out you got dehydrated, you weren't drinking enough water, and then obviously your body starts malfunctioning, and headache might be one of those symptoms, right? And so you can sort of say there's like a cause and effect there, and then you can address the cause. But let's say you have a headache, you just wake up with a headache, right? And there doesn't seem to be any reason for why you have a headache or a migraine, right? That's more of the internally driven symptom. Like there doesn't seem to be a cause for it, and so in that case, yes, it does seem to be like that's some kind of mental emotional thing that's expressing itself. In terms of the other cases, let's say you're exposed to a lot of radiation, and obviously it's almost inevitable that some kind of cancer develops if you have high enough radiation exposure. Then you might say, well, that wasn't caused by anything. Like that was just like a physical thing that expressed itself, right? Like that's the laws of laws of physics with with your flesh and blood body. It's going to respond to certain situations in a certain way, and that's entirely true in terms of symptoms. But I guess the bigger question then behind that is, how did you end up in that situation in the first place? Like, why did you end up dehydrated? Why did you end up in a scenario where you got exposed to mass radiation? I mean, and then those can be interesting questions because well, you then leads to the next question is, I ended up in that situation, but why didn't someone else? Like that, there has to be some sort of personal connection as to why you were exposed to those physical parameters. And then you can ask yourself, is it through neglect, or you weren't paying attention to your body? So there's always like a deeper reason for why people end up in some situations and not others, and why some people seem to escape like really harmful situations and others don't, right? Like some people have good luck and others have bad luck. What's behind that, right? So even though there might be an obvious external factor, it was dehydration that caused my headache. Well, how and why did you get dehydrated? It was when you weren't paying attention to your body. Did you not understand or appreciate that you have to stay hydrated in certain conditions? And so, there might be aspects of wisdom and, lack of self-love involved in terms of how you ended up in such a state. And so there's always something to learn, I think, even though it seems like a very obvious physical explanation for certain symptoms. There's still the question to ask of why did you yourself end up in that exact situation, where your body's not working that well. So there's always something to learn. There's like almost a deeper learning behind every difficult scenario.
So I have two questions. That leads me to think about
Mm-hmm.
accidents. When we fall, like I had a year where I burned
Mm-hmm.
myself, like I turned on a stove, and somehow, I don't know how, but somehow like there was a gas leak and it fell down to my legs, and there was like no real explanation. The kitchen was fine, that stove was fine, and
Mm-hmm.
no one could really understand how that happened. So
Right.
I got a second degree burn in my legs, and then I don't know, like the next month, or I fell off a scooter and scraped my knees and badly, and then the fourth month I fell again and like fractured my foot, my ankle.
Wow.
In a period of
Yep.
what, 5 to 6 months, there was injury after injury after injury, and those were three different accidents.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm wondering is there such a thing as an accident, as just a simple accident? What you just mentioned luck. I just had bad luck. Or is there always a message behind that accident, or something we can find behind that accident, whether it's like our own attention, are we paying attention to our environment, or our energy? Is there such a thing as as a simple plain accident?
For me, in my mind, no, I don't think there is. Obviously, from our human perspective, like we can't see like all the different inputs into a different, in any given scenario. But for me, there's usually something, drawing you into those scenarios. Like some people will call it the law of attraction, but um, I think that I guess that so-called law has been really misunderstood. It's more that there's something inviting you into that, and that sounds really harsh to say, especially if someone's ends up in a situation where they've had some sort of physical injury. You don't want to blame the person, but
Yeah, yeah. Some people even get
yeah,
offended
yeah,
by
it is.
that and
Yeah,
get mad, when you
yeah,
say, like, God, why do you keep
yeah, yeah,
injuring yourself?
yeah. It's almost like you almost victim blaming type thing, and I definitely don't want to get into that. That's not what I'm trying to suggest. But there's as I said, I mean, if you could step outside of your own life, I know, as you said, you describe three difficult experiences, three difficult injuries, but if you could step outside of your life and sort of ask, well, why did those things happen to me? Like my best friend or one of your other friends, they have a period of 5 months where none of those things happen to them, right? Like, so it's like, is like, what's happening? Like, is it like there's obviously something happening to me that's not happening to them, and what is that? And so if you can either believe that the universe is just kind of like random, or you can sort of more lean towards the other side and say that things have meaning and significance. And I guess the question you're asking, does everything have meaning and significance? And I would tend to probably more lean towards that, especially when things come in bunches, like you just described. Like there might be once-off unpleasant experiences, but then when there's a repeated experience of that in a short period of time, say over 5 months, and they're quite serious experiences, then well, there's there must be something there, right? Like that, it's not just
There's
bad
something
luck.
there. Yeah.
Yes, as you say, some sort of message or some
But
sort
if
of
it happens one time,
um,
but if it happens one time, it could be just bad luck.
possibly. But I much like dreams, I think it's worth respecting the experience and saying, well, is there like, can I learn from this? Like, what did I have a part in this? Was there inattention? What could I have done differently? So you could just write it off as bad luck, like saying you just said, I don't have a car, but let's say you did have a car and you're sitting at the traffic lights, and then someone backs into you, or no, sort of rams you from behind, and it's like you didn't do anything, right? Like it was almost entirely the fault of the other person. But you could just say that's an accident or whatnot. But I mean, again, you sort of, I think it's worth respecting all situations and asking. Um, is there a deeper relevance to me, like what took place, this experience? And you don't want to like get yourself in too many tangles and try to psychoanalyze like every single little thing. Like it's not like something you have to force yourself to do. Like it's more like it's more like a shift in attitude. Like if you do want to take that, that kind of respectful approach. Like I said, it's entirely optional. So but if you do want to take that approach, I tend to find that it leads to a more satisfying experience of your life. Like it's rather than seeing life as something that I guess happens to you, that kind of changes into a different attitude of life happening through you. And so, like I said, the first approach, life happens to you, kind of like you don't have a lot of power. It's like you just doing your best not to get knocked over, because there's always bigger forces in life. But if you kind of take the approach that life happens through you, then it becomes a much more magical experience. Like it's much more transformative, and you're kind of at the center of life, and you're at the center of your own journey when life happens through you. And so then, that leads to an attitude of like respecting things and trying to understand things, and it's just a different attitude, rather than life happening to you, life happens through you. So, um, yeah, so I think it's always worth asking the question, is like of, what this particular experience means, and on your, this exact time in your journey, so with in your case, I don't know if you eventually figured it out, or like it made sense to you, like having some those free
Oh
injury.
yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, totally.
Oh, you did? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
What did you have insight, or
Well,
you don't have to share, but
that's I could totally share. I had a friend who had a book, and I should ask him what the name of that book is, because it was like an encyclopedia of what each injury or any physical symptom means, even injuries. And he said second degree burns are those accidents come from guilt, feeling guilty. And the way I got that, the way that accident happened was so strange. We thought there was something wrong with the stove. Someone came and checked it. Nothing was wrong with the stove. It never had any issue. And to this day, every time I turn on the stove, I keep thinking, how the heck did that
yeah.
happen? So in the moment when he said that to me, I was like, whoa, I am feeling guilty about a bunch of
Oh.
things in my life. So that was like an obvious one. And I was almost relieved. I was traveling at the time, and it was sort of a trip. I was in Vietnam, and it was a trip I took because I was going through so much stuff in my life. I needed to get away to figure things out, and it happened like within the first 5
Mhm.
days. And I remember feeling guilty about a lot of other things, but also in the moment I was feeling guilty about not wanting to go out and experience the city and do traveling. I just wanted to be I was in Vietnam staying with my best
Mhm.
friend, and I just wanted to be on Netflix all day. He'd come back from work and he'd be like, "Okay, let's go see this. Let's go see," wanting to show me around, and I was like, "I don't want to." So when I got the injury, I was relieved that now I had an excuse to imagine that. Like now I was like I had to stay in bed for a couple weeks, and I was so, yes, that's awesome. And so it made me think about a lot of things, and it made me appreciate my body more and my legs more, and even the entire trip, because it was my entire legs, or a lot of the areas of my legs. So I was even thinking of, should I still be here? I'm in a very hot climate in Southeast Asia. Does this make sense? And so a lot of questions and lessons came up from that. It wasn't just
Mhm.
like one thing. And then, but after the third accident, the second accident was just me not paying attention. And then the third accident, it definitely, my family was saying, I think this must have something to do with you needing grounding, come back home, which is Venezuela. I was living in Canada
Mhm.
at the time. And I traveled Southeast Asia. I came back to Canada, and I was working like crazy because I burned all my savings, and my life was just, everything was up in the air. And yeah, and then I finally came to Venezuela. That third injury was probably, I couldn't work anymore, and it just, okay, that's it. I'll go to Venezuela.
Mhm.
So I think it's a lot of your own. What I like about you saying how you didn't talk to anyone and you kind of did it all on your own, is what I like about that is you decide, what your truth is, and what speaks to you the most, because other people could tell me, oh, you have to come back to your roots and reground yourself and come back home, and but I may think something else of it. So I think I always tell people that it's important to like find your own connection. I've tended to always ask others, what do you think, and go to therapy. I love therapy, and I'm like addicted to looking for advice and talking to my friends, and I've had to learn to just listen to myself and trust that, or trust whatever comes up first, which is what I think you have very strongly and very naturally.
No, that was beautifully told. I mean, definitely having that happen in a foreign country can definitely, I guess, be a bit scary as well. But as you said, it's almost like you're looking for an excuse not to engage with your environment. You just wanted to, I guess, shut up and just like stay in your little space rather than seeing this new city or whatever at the time. Yeah.
And then it also made me stronger because my family was pulling me. This is what I mean about people talking to you and you having to listen to yourself. my family was telling me that's a sign. You have to, like, they were worried about me escaping, and they kept, for me it was a calling to go to Asia, and that trip to completely change my life. But at the time my family was worried about me, how it was a very random, very last minute decision. So they were saying, this is a sign, maybe this is a sign, maybe you have to come
Yep.
back, you shouldn't be there. And I had to really decide this and think for myself, what do I want to do? And for me, I saw it as like the opposite. Like, this is a challenge that now I'm facing here, and it made me appreciate the trip and feel stronger, because it's like, okay, I got injured and I'm on my own. Now I have to take care of myself. So there's, like, with injuries and with sickness, I find there's a whole why did it happen, but then there's a what are you going to learn from it too, from the recovery of these things, about healing yourself and taking care of yourself now and moving forward. There's a huge amount of learning
Yeah.
there
What can I do
too.
differently? As you said, moving forward. Yeah. I mean, it's a more positive approach to I guess unpleasant experiences. A lot of people will just like feel bad, and I just had the attitude of, why me? Why is this happening to me? And that's like, that's very disempowered, rather than, what you just described, which is like, like I want to grow from this. Like, I want to do things differently. There's an opportunity here to be someone, to integrate this experience. And so, I guess in the law of one, that would be described as a positive use of catalyst. Like, you're taking an unfortunate experience or event, and then you're finding, I guess, the good in that, like, the ability to transform in a better way, rather than just putting up with the experience and then wanting the experience to be over, which we do. Like, if we've had bad things happen to us, we want to put it behind us as quickly as possible. But as it's about learning from it, as you just said. So, that's a perfect example of, as I said, positive use of catalyst. So yeah.
So this brings me now to talking about aging, when your body's simply aging. And so people, I get confused with, okay, so if everything has meaning, what about older people, and when your body is just simply sick because it's old and it's stopped functioning, what would this mean for people who are aging? Can we apply the same to them, or can we say, well, this is biological now and it's just part of nature? Your body starts to no longer function, or does it still apply? Like, how do we apply this to
Yeah.
older
Sure.
elders?
When, in that question, we have to consider that there's different degrees of aging. I think, there's famous examples in Japan. I think there's an island called Okinawa, and I guess they're quite renowned for producing people, human beings that consistently live, up to their hundreds and past their hundreds. Like, it's quite a phenomena, and it's actually, it's piqued the interest of quite a lot of, researchers, and that, well, what's happening here? Like, do they have special genetics, or is there something about their lifestyle and their way of relating to each other, which I guess promotes like a more graceful form of aging? Not just old age, but also a kind of very robust old age where you don't kind of degenerate as much. For me, I mean, yeah, with that question, I mean, there's different types of aging. You can have a very, I guess, a very rapid decline, where it feels like, you have to have hip replacements. Yeah, you start taking like a dozen medications every day, or it seems like, there, as I said, Okinawa in Japan is one of those examples, but they also, researchers have found that there's also other pockets around the world where certain ethnic groups, whether it's through their diet or their their lifestyle, their way of relating to each other, kind of promotes a more graceful form of aging, where they don't suffer these degenerative conditions as much, if at all. Like they seem to, live up to 100 and then become disabled. Like they're still quite mobile and active and involved in their community. There are ways of aging where, I guess, once you turn 80 or 85, they put you in a nursing home, and then you just sit in your room waiting for the next meal, like, or there's ways of aging in other types of communities where like you're still involved in other people's lives, you're still sort of contributing in some way. And so I would take those as positive examples. Like there's different ways of aging, like, and diet is a big factor. How involved you are in certain relationships, whether it's your own family, being involved in your own family, or if they put you in a nursing home, or just being involved with your peers, like you're still active in some way. There's a book I would recommend. It's called Ikigai, Ikagai, and it's a Japanese word, and they seem to have figured out many of the components of, like I said, that graceful form of aging, but also living a fulfilled life. So that's something I would look up if you're interested in that kind of thing.
So yeah, I've heard of I did when I was in Thailand, I heard of a Buddhist monk was telling me how they can choose to die, basically, not really out of because of all the meditation they've done and purification. She was saying how most of them, they don't get sick per se, or there's no horrible sickness. They choose to die, basically, or they can choose to die if they want to, and it's a conscious decision. What do you think about all of that?
Yeah, I've definitely heard about that phenomena as well. And obviously, I haven't experienced it yet, but I do believe that, yes, it's something that, if you're very in tune with your fuller beingness and, I guess, your purpose, if you feel like you've done what you came here to do, yes, you could access a very deep state, and then that's it. You could just leave your body and not come back, and then it's done in a totally conscious way. I imagine it's quite rare. I mean, to be able to access that level of harmony with your, I guess, your higher self or your deeper beingness. But I do. I don't doubt those stories for a moment. I think they're probably very legitimate, and it's a very beautiful thing. If someone has completed their this incarnation, and quite possibly they could also just die in their sleep, like that night. But there's also something wondrous about being able to know when the end is coming, and maybe I think some of these individuals actually tell their group that they're leaving, so there's no trauma involved. Like they can all say goodbye to them in person, and then, like I said, there's different scenarios, but I think some of them, they just start meditating, and then after a period of time, they slump over and then they're gone. So they're quite remarkable stories, but I do believe them. Yes.
What does a law of one believe about life after death?
In the law of one, they describe a phenomena where it's basically what other traditions call the life review, highlight reel of your life from your first breath to your last breath, and there's always things that you could have done differently. I mean, there's definitely a celebration of the things that you did well, the amount of good you brought into the world, the experience of compassion, the experience of love, romantic love, but just the love that's found in friendships and with your family. But basically, the life review, also highlights the things that could have been done differently. That's not necessarily like a judgment on someone. It's more like I could have done a bit better there, or I didn't really learn from that relationship, like that. That was an opportunity to learn something about myself and the other person, and I just ended up hating them, and I couldn't get beyond that into forgiveness. So the life review is definitely a very important thing. Like it actually makes sense of things. Like you get the big picture. Like you can see all the inputs into a situation. And like I said, it's not a judgment. If there's any sort of criticism, it's more self-criticism. Like you can see that I could have done that better. That kind of thing. And then after the life review, there's a process of healing where you sort of, like you described, the kind of approach that you've had in life, where you've asked for advice, you've gone to therapy. There is that kind of support. It is valuable to be able to do these things on your own, but it's also good to recognize that you do need support a lot of the times. And so definitely after death, you need a back in the spirit world, and you got a lot more resources to draw upon. And so that help is available, and it's more than welcome, for you to utilize. And so you also go through that process of deeper understanding as well. After the life review, there might have been some things that you recognize you could have done better, but you don't see, exactly how. Like you could see that, you could recognize that you maybe made a mistake, but you don't quite understand the situation fully. And so then, you have helpers and different issues. And definitely if someone's had a traumatic life, like they definitely need that. And then after that, then there's the planning for the next lifetime and things like that. So they actually call that, I guess, that dimension or that place and space. That's kind of contrasted with the experience we're having now, which is space-time, which is more physical and sort of things are like solid, whereas in time-space, things are much more fluid and dynamic. So they don't have that kind of like, things aren't as bound in time over there on the other side. You can call it the afterlife or the beyond or the spirit world or, whatever tradition, whatever traditional term you want to use. But Ra, I guess, refers to as time space. So yeah.
Do you believe in reincarnation?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's the only thing that makes sense to me. Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. This isn't just an isolated experience like this one physical body, but it's part of a bigger set of experiences, both the experiences you've had before, as well as the experiences you've had after, that you will have afterwards. Like it's not just a once-off experience of this, in this particular body as Garry. Like there's been many experiences before, and there's experiences afterwards as well.
And
So
that's where you talk about karma. Do you believe in karma as well?
yeah, karma's not necessarily punishment. It's just momentum, like things that have been set in motion by your consciousness in a previous lifetime. That doesn't disappear. I mean, it has momentum, and like I said, it's not a physical thing. Like if you have physical things in the world, like eventually they'll stop moving. But if you have momentum in consciousness, that just keeps on going until you face up to it. So that's all karma is. Like it's just things that have been set in motion by yourself, just continuing to move until you face up to it. So yeah, that's my understanding of karma.
I've loved everything you've shared so far, and you explain it super clearly. Um, I want to conclude with, or I want to end the conversation talking about how you apply this with other people, how you heal other people, and how you said it took 5 years to heal yourself and finally get to the point where you thought you could heal someone else. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's it's a good
how did
question.
that go? Like, was that hard at first, or did it come naturally to you as well to heal
For me,
others?
well, yeah, I was actually pretty shocked, like to tell you the truth. Like I said, um, that I guess that transition point from healing myself to then actually, I guess, offering this service to others, it wasn't something I planned. I think I mentioned that, but like, it's not something I dreamed about. Like, when I was growing up, like, oh, I want to become a healer one day. I want to do that. Like, it didn't even occur to me that I would do that. And even when I was going through this self-healing process, it's not like, all right, once I'm done, then I'll do this. Like, it wasn't. I I wasn't considering it. Like,
Right.
it wasn't even on my radar. So as I said, it felt very much like a calling, like almost like an instruction. And you might, it wasn't someone telling me what to do. It was just like, um, this life path that you've planned before you came down, like, does involve or did involve you doing this. And so that's what it felt like. It's like I got to a particular stage. I'd balanced myself enough, or I healed myself enough, and I understood the process enough that then, yes, then you can sort of radiate this. You can actually, this is of benefit to others. Like, others don't have to go through this 5-year process of learning all the details of how to do it. There's a way of summarizing this. I guess when I felt the calling, it's kind of irresistible. Like I said, it wasn't like someone telling me what to do. It was just like, I guess this is what I'm doing now. This is my duty. I wasn't expecting too much, so I was kind of shocked when I offered it to some friends, like people that I guess were more open-minded, and some others that I'd come across that were interested in the raw material. So they'd be more sort of inclined, to this kind of practice, of healing. And so I did reach out to some people and said, oh, look, I'm thinking about healing. Would you want to try it? And so I wasn't expecting too much, but when, like I said, the results were very obvious. Getting positive results pretty much straight away. That was the shocking thing to me. Like I thought that this would take a bit more time to get expertise at, but I guess I underestimated like how much preparation I'd already done in sort of working on myself. Like when when those, I guess, positive stories started coming back, like people said, like my back doesn't hurt anymore. It's like, and I've had this for like 10 years. Like, and it's like, oh, wow. Okay. I guess that's pretty cool. And then someone else would come back and said, I had issues with my throat and, I was having a lot of phlegm, like a chronic thing. They could, they tried other things and it seemed like nothing could fix it. And then it's like, that was gone. It's like, all right, that's pretty cool. So, all right. So the success was pretty immediate. And so, first of all, that gave me like a lot of encouragement and some kind of belief that, all right, this is actually possible and like I'm actually involved in this process and it's working. And so, if I didn't have that initial success, I'm not sure like how long I would have persisted with it for, because it's such a strange thing to offer. Like I said, I didn't grow up with this in my world, this idea of metaphysical healing and Reiki and that kind of stuff like that. It wasn't part of my vocabulary or experience. And so to delve into that and then to make myself like a practitioner in a public way like that, I'm not sure how long I would have stuck with that if I didn't have that initial success. It was pretty astounding to me that there was that much effect on other people. And so how it works is that what's called the indigo ray, it's traditionally the third eye between your brows. That basically gives you, I guess, some access to this time-space dimension that I mentioned previously, that you don't normally access during your waking state, during our normal lives. And so through that third eye channel, you can sort of help balance other people on a deeper level. And so that's basically the basis of the healing and, being able to offer this service to others.
I want to get to how you do the actual healing with somebody.
Yeah. So if someone goes to my website and then, there's a form there you can submit. You can just tell me, you sort of describe your situation and, your symptoms, and then you can just give a bit of background about yourself, about what you've done to treat it and things like that. And then I'll write back to the person and I'll organize, I call it a session. I'll give a date and a time relevant to their whatever location they're in, if they're in the US or somewhere in Europe. So I'll give a local time, and then they don't have to be present for the working. But when I do start the working, I'll basically tune into their situation through the third eye that I just described before. And then that helps me, or that kind of shows me where the person's imbalances are. As I said, this process of healing happens through imbalance, then balance. So that's actually how healing takes place. As a facilitator, I can sort of intervene on their behalf in terms of addressing those imbalances. There are situations where someone has an imbalance and they haven't sort of done enough personal work. Like they haven't really acknowledged that there's something deeper at work. Like they purely see it as a mechanical or a physical defect. Like there isn't that attitude of there's something to learn from this, or there's something I don't understand about myself. And that if the wrong attitude is in place, then even though I can see the imbalance, the person has the situation in their lives because, they haven't recognized that there's something deeper at play. And so, as a healer, I do what I can, but then, the other person also has to step up their game in terms of, like just continuing on their own journey. And so if they're not ready, then, it doesn't matter how ready I am, like nothing's really going to change. But in most cases, people who are going to write to me and reach out for metaphysical healing, some part of them is already, they already acknowledge that there's something else going on rather than just the physical. So for them, when they're ready, I can facilitate those balances. Like I can offer the acceptance, understanding, forgiveness on an energetic level, which then translates into like different dynamics in their body and their consciousness. And there's also different stages of healing. People can sort of like have a, say, a 50% reduction in symptoms, and then they're still kind of left with that 50%, and there's still something to learn from that. So that, you know, healing, as with all things, it's a process. And but as if anyone's dealt with a chronic condition, I mean, they will gladly take any kind of relief, you know, whether it's 20% or 30%, you know, even just initially, like to experience a lesser load, you know, like just a better quality of life. So even if an absolute healing, like it's just totally gone, I mean, anyone, yeah, like I said, anyone who's had a chronic condition would very much notice like any reduction in symptoms, even if it's only like 20 or 30%. And so that would be, you'd gladly accept that, you know, even as a first step. So yeah, so I definitely don't promise that everything's going to be resolved 100% in 1 hour, but that's the way I do it. Like I tune into them, and then I'm able to see the deeper imbalances, and then I offer the appropriate balances to them, to their consciousness and their soul and their personality. And if those are integrated, then yeah, that there'll usually be some sort of shift, and that can unfold over the, you know, the coming week, the week afterwards. So that's basically the process. Like the person doesn't have to do anything. They don't have to talk to me. They don't have to send me a photo. You know, they can even be asleep if they don't want to, like I said, I give them a day and a time, and if they just want to cook dinner and read a book, they're happy to do that. Like that's not like, it's happening on a deeper level. But usually, you know, most people want to like just sit quietly and just see if they feel anything. And yeah, quite often people have energetic sensations, or they might even get relief straight away, you know. So it's the ultimate therapy. Like the person doesn't do anything. But yeah, it all takes place within an hour that I sort of coordinate with them. And then after the hour's done, I'll send them a summary, and that can contain varying degrees of information. Sometimes there's a lot of information. Other times, you know, there's just like enough to say, yeah, I've helped balance things, and that's enough. Like it depends on how much information is needed or is appropriate for that individual.
I trust people who say donate me if it works. Like that kind of thing really generates more trust for me. I understand some people do have to make a living, but there's a lot of healers out there that charge a lot of money, which I can sometimes understand, but other times I think, if you know, is there a contradiction there? Because some people really need healing and don't have that kind of money to pay.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah. Especially, you know, it's fine if you're living in like a Western country, like say USA, Canada, Western Europe, Australia, or New Zealand. But there's plenty of other countries outside of that, and like their average income is, you know, it doesn't translate to very much. So for them to pay $80 or $180, I mean, it's just not even possible for them. Like even if they wanted to, like pay that much upfront. And so, in terms of like reaching out to people and helping the people that need help, I mean, there's plenty of people that don't live in those Western countries that can benefit. So, yeah, yeah, no judgment on those people, but it does limit how many people you can help. And if you're really a healer, I mean, that should be the first thing on your mind, right? It's, if you make an income, that's okay, but if you can't, then, you know, like that should be secondary to me. And so, I mean, obviously, yeah, I've found a way to make it work, but yeah, I mean, even like in Western countries, I mean, you have people that might be either students or pensioners, like, and so they also can't, you know, they can't come up with like $180 like some of these people ask, you know, upfront. And so it's a tough one. Like, and everyone working in this space, you know, they have to ask the question, you know, do they want to make this their life's work? Then if so, then how can they keep paying the rent and things like that? So
that's awesome. I think I've had all the questions answered. Thank you very much, Garry.
no, it's been a pleasure asking me on, and yeah, you've been a great host. It was great to be able to tell my story. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. And remember, if you want to check out Garry's services, you can go to his website link, which I will put down in the caption. Not only is it by donation, but nothing is required of you during the actual session. So why not, right?